What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Grid Encore. Expecting the show to be about an hour in length tonight. Hopefully we get to the white flag before the overtime light comes on and the caution comes out and ruins Parker Kligerman's last best chance of winning an Xfinity Series race as a full-time driver. I'm your host, Ben Schneider, joined, as always, by Brandon Crossland. Brandon, how are you doing on this fine Motor Monday here?
Hi, I'm Brandon Crossland. For more content like this, go to Grid Network. Hey, it's another Motor Monday, and it's a tale of the 48s for this weekend, unfortunately. And both of these incidents, that's not a word, incidents are going to be our main topics of discussion, if you couldn't already guess it. But hey, welcome to Grid Encore. Glad to have you with us.
I think incidences is a word. It's,
Incidences.
Not interchangeable in that sense, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's the plural of incidents, right? You can say that's a word, but everybody knew what you meant. Obviously, we had two separate incidents involving 48 cars being struck with misfortune this weekend, and of course, obviously, we'll dedicate most of the show to the Xfinity Series number 48 team, Big Machine Racing, and Parker Kligerman. But we do have an update on Alex Bowman's situation as well. Hendrick Motorsports announcing that they won't appeal that. And Brandon, since you weren't on the wrap-up show yesterday, I'll give you your chance to give you some thoughts on the Cup Series race as well a little bit later. But before we do that, as always, I want to give a shout out to our Patreon investors, Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this channel and this motorsports media outlet that we are trying to build here, not just through this show, but through all our shows and all our programming at Grid Network. And if you like what you see tonight, if you want to consider joining them and helping keep us on the air, not just through the rest of this year, but into next year, and help us get to the track on a more regular basis, you can consider visiting the link in the description box below to our Patreon page, or if you'd rather make a one-time donation, we have the Buy Me a Coffee option available to you as well, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can always choose the Super Chat option. Now, obviously, as I teased in the opening, the bulk of the show tonight is going to be about the Xfinity Series race, and what we thought was the original Xfinity Series finish ended up not being the finish, ended up being the lead-in to yet another overtime situation. But the caution light, rather, coming out of a last possible moment for Parker Kligerman, costing what appeared to be at first a hard-fought, hard-earned victory for the driver of number 48, Big Machine Racing Chevrolet. Here's fan favorite Kenny Wallace's take on what happened and what led to the decision NASCAR made and who was responsible for that decision.
Parker Kligerman, he got screwed, blued, and tattooed. I feel so bad for him. Here's the controversy. It's human. It's the human. NASCAR decides when to push that button. It's a human up there. The human decides when to push the button. So they push the button 2 feet before Parker Kligerman gets there, and it's just a and that's all there is to it.
And you know what, Brandon? I think that's the most frustrating part of this whole situation for me. It's a human situation. It's not like you can say, well, a computer dictates when there's an obstacle on the track or a situation on the racetrack that makes green flag racing unsafe. The human being in the control room waited until the literal last possible moment, as you can see on the screen right here. This was the moment the caution came out. You can see Parker Kligerman literally, I don't even know if that's feet away, Brandon. That might be inches away from taking the white flag. The flagman obviously has the white flag in his hand, doesn't have the yellow flag in his hand yet because the caution light has just come on now. And that is what costs Parker Kligerman what would have been his first ever Xfinity Series win. Brandon, I'll just let you have the floor here. What are your thoughts on how this Xfinity race finished out, and what are your feelings regarding Parker Kligerman and an absolute heart-wrenching loss at the Charlotte Roval?
Well, I hope I can give you a speech. I'm flattered. But Kligerman literally going to the L there on the Charlotte wall, I guess that was a little fitting because he was given the L by the man who hits the button. But I told you backstage, Kenny Wallace there, his opinion, it's pretty spot on. Although I would prefer he would have had the coffee mug as his per usual Kenny conversations. But yeah, Parker Kligerman, no question, was robbed of a race win. And it was just egregious to see just how close he got there before the yellow came out. And from the naked eye, the crew at the 48 camp thought he had the win. Even the flagman thought he had the win. He had the white out the whole time for one lap to go. But here's the facts. Leland Honeyman was over there under a bunch of tires and basically in a cave. I mean, completely unsafe for cars to go by that. So, yes, the caution is going to have to come out at some point. And the man who presses the button, I wish I had an inside tour because we've had so many instances like this, Ben, where it's been so much determined by the human that is pressing the button. We might need one of these Tesla Optimus fellows to come out here and do this job. Maybe they would be a little more neutral. But I still think the NASCAR officials are trying to be as neutral as they can. I'm not a tinfoil conspiracy theorist. I don't think they're playing favorites or any of this jazz that you see around Reddit and things like that. But dadgummit, it sucks. I mean, for Parker Kligerman, like, so close. And I hate to say it, but like this, I mean, for looking at like a selfishness for, on Parker Kligerman's standpoint, announcing he's not going to be full-time racing next year, this really was his last chance to get a win while he's still in full-time competition anyway. He certainly could come out on a one-off and grab a victory, but this was his one chance to take the win. And Adam, joining us there, Parker Kligerman deserved to win the Charlotte Roval on Saturday, absolutely. And I don't think there was any favoritisms towards JRM. I don't think there was any, bad opinions towards Parker Kligerman. It happened the way it did. And this is we're not surprised though, is the big thing, where you can add this to a long list of other instances where the circumstances of a race or someone's win was just changed in a matter of moments. But really, I'd say it's got to be one of the closest ones we've had.
Yeah, well, there's definitely, I mean, let's get that tinfoil crap out of here right now. We're not saying that there's any favoritism towards Junior Motorsports or Hendrick Motorsports. If there were, we wouldn't have seen Alex Bowman disqualified and thus eliminated from the playoffs in yesterday's race. So nobody here is saying that. What we are saying is that, as Kenny Wallace said, a human being, again, it's not scripted, it's not rigged, there's no favoritism, but a human being literally has the power to change the outcome of the race, dictate who wins and loses the race, or who at least has a better or worse chance of winning or losing a race whenever that human being decides to flip that caution switch or whatever. And Brandon, you were exactly right. Leland Honeyman, the car was engulfed. I mean, it was underneath the tires. I mean, I don't know how he climbed out of that thing. Like, there was no way you could say, because at least with Ryan Preece at Indianapolis, you could say, well, maybe let's see, maybe let's give him a minute to see if he can fire back up and drive away, or maybe you could argue that there was no argument here. That car was not going to go anywhere.
And isn't it funny how it works that way, Ben? Either it's a self-spin that's like little sissy self-spin that throws out the yellow, or it's something that's just so comically just bad that happens like that, like Leland Honeyman, for instance, just so comical. I mean, the dude is under the tire barrier completely. Looked a lot like the turn that Mike Bagley had at Chicago, or he's had the past couple of years. Sure, yeah. I believe it was Noah Gragson that was like, yeah, he's not coming out of that.
Yep. Spinning the tires and everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And forgive me, because I'm going to get on the playoff soapbox again here for just a moment. But this is part of why I don't like this system, and I think this sport is too chaotic for this. Because what other sport? People say, name me a sport that doesn't have some sort of a playoff, right? Why shouldn't we have a playoff? Can you name me a sport where a guy running, with no disrespect to Leland Honeyman, where did he end up here? 28. Guy finishes 28th. I assume he was running a little bit higher than that before the accident. But somebody who's not a part of the playoff conversation, somebody who may have been having a decent run given the equipment that he's in, but whatever the case may be, or somebody who's a complete back marker, who's just doing the best with what they can, or whatever. They're all out there. They all have stories to tell too, and they all have races to run to. And something completely unrelated to the playoff picture or who's winning or losing this race, it changes the complexion of the playoff battle, right? So Parker Kligerman's going to win this race. he's put in the drive of his life. The one car has had some transmission issues coming onto NASCAR 1 and 2, as it were. Seems like Parker's got it in the bag if he can just get to the white flag. And even if the race goes green, probably is set to win this race and advance to the round of 8, right? Sam Mayer's going to be out. Leon Honeyman, however, has this incident. And again, like to your point, Brandon, there was no way he was coming out of those tires. So it was bad enough when we initially thought, oh, they didn't want to go to overtime. They let Parker cross the start finish line and held the white flag for him, right? It was like Kyle Larson in Indianapolis all over again, right? They held the white flag to let this driver win the race. Again, not saying there's favoritism or anything, but it happened to benefit that driver who was in the lead of a time. But then it gets even worse because you realize they did put the caution light on. I mean, I don't know if you could try to make it closer. I mean, we have to keep showing this image because
I'm going to need to NBC it, Ben.
Yeah, you got to blow it up. You got to NBC it. That's exactly right. It's an unbelievable reminder of just how close it was. And keep in mind, how quickly Parker's coming, even though it's not like he's on the oval, he's still accelerating off of that corner. I mean, that is a matter of microseconds. And it's just, I don't know. I struggle to come up with the words for how ridiculous it is that we have to come on here once again in a time of the year where we should be talking about, whatever this system wants us to talk about, right? Like underdog stories making it to the round of 8, or who's your championship favorite now. And we'll get into what the playoff picture looks like here in just a moment. Sam Mayer coming off of a disqualification last week and looking like he had to go out and win. And he does that and he beats, look who was second and third, 2 of the best road course racers in the series, right? Maybe the 2 best. I mean, I feel bad for Sam Mayer. Like this is a big story for him. But everybody's talking about race control and whoever was up there in that tower. And like I said, because I posted some videos on Saturday night because I was like, I can't wait 48 hours to give my initial thoughts here because this is too important. But this is part of the reason why I feel like people continue to look at this sport and it's difficult sometimes to take it seriously. And I don't know there's obviously a lot going on in this sport right now that, it has business implications that are way over my head, or, information that obviously you or I aren't, privy to or anything like that. We don't know what's going to happen with Front Row and 2311, but I don't know, man. There's a part of me that feels like if we can't even trust the sanctioning body to press a button, like, how can we trust them with anything else in this sport? Like, this is just, it seems like such an easy call to make. And then you see this tweet from Bob Pockrass, and he says, asked NASCAR about the delay in the caution, and apparently that area where Honeyman was underneath the tires is difficult to see from the tower, and that is partly what delayed them throwing the caution. I don't know. Are they not watching the CW like we are? Do they not have access
it's
to
on
that
a tape delay. If you're actually there in person IRL, it most likely is on a tape delay because you can't see live footage on the CW when you're actually there live.
I don't know. Well, but then I feel like the tower should have cameras around the track. Like maybe they don't have the
real-time
CW
footage,
feed, but they should have as close to real-time footage as you can get. I mean, it's 2024 for crying out loud. I would think the technology exists. But even if it didn't, I feel like he was there long enough. I mean, we heard the 48 radio, get to the white, get to the white, get to the white. Like they knew that there was a car in there. And the timing, borrow a phrase from RCR, the timing of this could not have been worse, right? Literally could not have been worse timing on when the caution came out. And I'm sick to my stomach for Parker Kligerman, like you mentioned, Brandon, because I'm not going to say he can't go out and win one of these round of 8 races or even the championship 4, because Parker's a good driver and he's got a good team with him that's going to fight like hell for the next 4 weeks. But you're right. This did feel like his last best chance to get an Xfinity Series win, at least as a full-time driver. And, I mean, boy, would he have earned it. My goodness, would he have earned it. I mean, I know colleague kind of messed up SVG's strategy, and Van Gisbergen was left out there on old tires. I know Sam Mayer, had that transmission issue, but it looked like when his car was firing off of turn 7, as it should, he had a faster car, and you saw it on the overtime restart. He had the best car at the end. AJ Allmendinger up there as well. You know, a guy who literally had never lost this race. When AJ Allmendinger was in the Charlotte Roval Xfinity race, he was 4 for 4. He had never lost this race. He was ahead of Allmendinger. He was ahead of Mayer, who was driving a better handling, faster car. He was ahead of Van Gisbergen, who's been unstoppable on these road courses in this series this year. I mean, this was going to be one of the most well-earned, well-respected victories in recent history, certainly in this series. I think in all of NASCAR, you can say that. And I don't know. I saw this conversation. My friend Luis Torres was going back and forth with somebody else as well, you know, saying we're going to remember this drive. And somebody else was saying nobody ever remembers who finishes second. And that's the tragic part of this. And I think there are exceptions to it. I think, you know, everybody I think remembers who finished second at the Daytona 500 in 2007, right? Like, you know, everybody knows that's part of Mark Martin's story. I think a lot of fans still remember, you know, when Matt DiBenedetto finished second at Bristol to Denny Hamlin in the Bristol Night Race all those years ago in the 95 Levine family racing car.
I was at that one.
Yeah, there you go.
Somehow, yeah.
Yep. And again, I think, you know, this is going to be part of Parker's legacy. Nobody can take the drive away from him. You know, he would have earned this victory, no doubt about it, no question about it. And it's unfortunate, and he tried his best during the overtime, obviously, but just ultimately didn't have it. You know, it was just too much to ask, and he ends up falling to 6th place. I think he had a tire rub. I think there was a little bit of contact with Mayer. And to Parker's credit, he handled it very well and said it was close to the limit, but, you know, it was still all fair, and credit to the junior motorsports team. But it's hard not to watch a race like that, watch a finish like that, and just be sick to your stomach because of who was involved and the situation that led up to that.
Yeah, and I remember in weeks prior, I've been saying this will be Parker Kligerman's best shot when we were talking about him being in the playoff picture, going to the Charlotte Roval. This was going to be his best place to get a victory, and he just almost did it. Like, there's really not too much you can say about it. Like, what is your solution to this problem? I mean, besides firing the person, I think we already fired. I think we've already fired them a couple of times this year. So, like, what is the solution? What do you do to quote unquote prevent something like this?
You know, Brandon, one of my favorite moments here in my Grid Network career was after the 2022 Fall Texas race, and we were on the air, and we had some tweets come in as we were on the air, and NASCAR came out and basically said, you know, we completely missed the William Byron Denny Hamlin incident, and Denny Hamlin was tweeting about how it played on the screen 5 times, and I was talking about how Big Hoss at Texas Motor Speedway is literally the world record largest TV screen. They literally played it on the largest TV screen on the planet 5 times, and they still missed it. But I don't know, man. Like, this totally changed the outcome of the race and the finish of the race. Like, if you miss this one, it's just as bad. It might be worse. I don't know. I mean, I have a very hard time, and Brock Beard said this on his streams last night as well. Very hard time buying the excuse in 2024 with all the cameras that we have positioned around the track, all the technology and telemetry that we have in the control room. I have a very hard time believing that you were just completely oblivious to a car being underneath the tire barriers and clearly unable to move. That just, I don't know. I just don't buy it.
Like, again, what do we do? Is there a higher management that needs to be reordered now, that needs to go?
Oh, I don't know. I miss David Hoots. I mean, how ironic is it that David Hoots was on the Dale Jr. download this past week or whenever? I don't know. I just, again, I hate to go there. I hate to say that, you know, somebody should lose their job, but I mean, it's unacceptable. It's the second highest level of stock car racing in the country, and you have a situation like this where, I don't know, it's such, either you have to throw the caution immediately, or I can't believe we're saying this, but I think the less bad option would have been like, okay, you know, Parker earned this one. Let's just let him get to the white. It's close enough, and let the top 5 all cross the line, and then or make the excuse like, well, maybe by some miracle, Honeyman was going to be okay, and he could have gotten out, or he was far enough underneath the tires that it. I don't know. Just come up with some other excuse, but let the top 5 all cross the line, or let Parker get as close to the crash scene as he possibly can before you throw a yellow. That would have been less bad. I can't say better, but it would have been less bad than literally waiting until he was inches away to flip that button and put the caution light on. So I don't know. We'll leave it there. And certainly, I'm sure fans are going to continue talking about this all week. Can't wait for Parker's Money Lap podcast to come out this week and get his raw, unfiltered thoughts on the situation. I know that he's been making the media rounds today. I think he was on the new NASCAR Daily Show today as well. So I'll definitely make sure to try to check that out here once we get off the air. But in the meantime, let's just put a bow on this here. Joe Samaniego, good to see you in the chat, Joe. I didn't watch the race, but from the highlights on social media, feel heartbroken for Parker. I think everybody does. Now, I guess we have to provide some comic relief here before we move on. Brandon, I want to thank you for bringing this to my attention here. When life gives you lemons, you have to make lemonade. This was the official highlight reel posted to the Motorsports and NBC YouTube channel, and it ends with Parker Kligerman watching Sam Mayer's burnout, just dejected after getting out of his number 48 car. This is unedited footage from that video. Take a look.
Parker getting out of the car. You can already see just how close he was.
Hi, I'm Parker Kligerman. For more access like this from Pit Road, be sure to click and subscribe to the Motorsports and NBC YouTube channel.
Almost did a spit take, Ben. I got some good apple cider here. Didn't want to get rid of that. Hey, someone needs to take that footage and those deep fry memes. We need the deep fried. Hi, I'm Parker Kligerman. Just like that would be the best.
I know they use the same template for all of those clips and all those videos every time. I mean, just go to any Motorsports on NBC YouTube video. It's the same
every week. Yeah.
But Parker Kligerman telling you to like, comment, and subscribe as all YouTube channels do. But this one's a little awkward to say the least. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it's a little sketchy whenever you've got a driver analyst. It could have been anyone else. But like imagine Parker getting in a fight at the end of a race and just like bloody on the ground, and then go straight to, hi, I'm Parker Kligerman for more for more action like this on pit road. It's comical.
Did they tape one of these with Marty Snyder? I mean, maybe they should have used one of Marty saying like, hey, subscribe to our channel or something like that.
And I'm pretty sure that's Parker Kligerman from like 2 years ago at the Phoenix Championship because I remember when that was like brand new, and they've been doing that one ever since. I think it was from 2022, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it feels like it's been more than a year. So yeah, probably You're probably right. 2022. All right, we'll leave it there. Heart goes out to Parker Kligerman. We'll see. Hopefully he can break through here, even though he's now out of the playoff picture. We'll see if he can get one in any of these next 4 races here. But again, like I said, it felt like his last best chance, and it's a shame that circumstances just didn't work out for him. Also eliminated from the playoff picture, Shane Van Gisbergen. We'll talk about him a little bit more in just a moment. Sheldon Creed, boy, did he have a rough day. It won't be the parallel with Daniel Hemrick, all of his runner-up finishes and then winning his first race as he wins the championship in the Gibbs number 18 car. That's not going to happen for Creed this year. And Riley Herbst as well, despite a strong run at Talladega last week, finishes 32nd, I believe, as we'll go on the second page here just to make sure. Yep, there you go. You see Creed down there in 35th. So both of them as well having rough afternoons. They are eliminated from playoff contention as well. Moving on to the round of 8, Justin Allgaier, Cole Custer, Austin Hill, Chandler Smith, Sam Mayer, Jesse Love, AJ Allmendinger, and Sammy Smith. And Brandon, let's talk about Sam Mayer here. Like we said last week, he was disqualified from a Talladega race, really kind of put him in a must-win situation. That's exactly what he did here. So let's be fair to the situation here. Obviously, everybody's heartbroken for Parker, but you can't take anything away from the drive Sam Mayer put in, again, especially considering the 2 drivers that he beat for this Roval victory. What are your thoughts on Mayer being the one to get the Hail Mary last-minute win here to move on to the round of 8? And do you think he could be a championship contender with this junior motorsports program this year?
Yeah, absolutely a championship contender out of Sam Mayer. But yeah, he did exactly what he needed to do. He was one of the next best drivers, and in the uncertainty of how NASCAR operates, sometimes he in the right spot. He also worked his tail off to be up there with Parker, and able to get a good restart and able to knock it out and get the win after all the chaos was said and done. He's absolutely a great championship contender, and after his first win at Road America, ever since then that Band-Aid was sort of just ripped off, and I think he really has been flying since then, especially with the road courses as well.
Yeah, back-to-back wins as well for Junior Motorsports, and a couple drivers that certainly needed that shot in the arm, I think, with Sammy Smith and Sam Mayer as well. So we'll see. Mayer, obviously, I think, had a better first half of the year than the second half. He's been kind of looking to regain that momentum, and certainly thought, based on last week's show, that the DQ at Talladega might be the nail in the coffin here. This was certainly a victory that he needed, and like we said, Parker Kligerman was going to have earned it, no doubt about it. Sam Mayer earned this one, no doubt about it as well, given who he had to beat to get there. He had to pass Parker Kligerman, who was putting him a drive of his life, and then he had to hold off a couple of guys from Colleague Racing, who are, as I said, probably the two best, most accomplished road course racers in this series here. So, Brandon, let's talk about Colleague Racing. Let's start with the driver that finished third, and Shane Van Gisbergen. Were you surprised by the call at the end for Colleague to leave him out after several others came into the pits out there on old tires, did his best holding off Sam Mayer and Parker Kligerman for a while, but eventually tires just gave way. There was nothing you could do.
Yeah, I don't really understand that too much, Ben. We were on, I was able to be with USRN yesterday for the Cup race, and that was one of our big concerns, was just the strategy of, do you wait till the end of the stages to take your tires, and when you get to the final stage, where are you going to do that? We saw how it worked for Tyler Reddick yesterday, man, able to just go on a tear and start passing like nobody's business because he had to. One pass was 1 point, and he was able to add those up. But for SVG in the Xfinity race, he was kind of left out to dry there. And surprisingly, it seems maybe a lot of the infield portions of the Roval are a little abrasive there on rubber. So, speaking of which, I just watched a video of Ricky Rudd with Chris Weaver, I think it was, and taking a couple of lap tears around the Charlotte Roval, and even he was already talking about the tires as he was going through the infield section. Of course, that's with a street car, but anyway, that was a big component of that. So yeah, I'm surprised they didn't put him out, put some fresh tires on when everyone else decided to pit for SVG, because I mean, even with his skill set, if you don't have the shoes to keep going, you're not going to last.
Yeah, I got to say, really surprising decision for me as well. I think for everybody watching. But then again, you had to be in the back of your mind here. If anybody can do this, hold off the field here with however many cars they had to pass to get through. It could potentially be SVG, but it just got to the point ultimately where even somebody who's been so dominant on the road courses ever since he got to the series this year simply didn't have the car or didn't have the tires, I should say, to be able to hold off the hard chargers behind him who did. So unfortunate situation for him, and unfortunate for AJ Allmendinger as well. I guess he can say he's still undefeated on the original layout in this race, but coming up just one spot short there. Second place finish to Sam Mayer, and coming up short yesterday as well in the Cup race, although he did have a solid run. I guess he gets promoted with no, actually he doesn't, because Bowman finished further back. He just got disqualified from his spot. I was going to thinking like if the winner gotten disqualified, would have promoted him up to the top five, but I believe he ended up in sixth, and SVG seventh in the Cup race yesterday. So
I shed a tear.
Yeah, strong runs. Yeah, strong runs nonetheless. But that being said, Brandon, are you surprised looking at this Colleague duo? They were both in both races and come away 0 for 4 in terms of the trophy hunting that Colleague is famous for. Are you surprised neither one of them won either race this weekend?
Yeah, that it's very strange, and it's a shame that strategy took SVG out of the win as far as his ride. But AJ Allmendinger, I think we said yesterday on the broadcast that now his Xfinity record on the Charlotte Roval, his average finish is somewhere around 1.7, like never losing. So Yeah, I mean he's got a lot to look back on with the old layout for sure. But yeah, really surprised neither of them won. It was going to be in my mind, it was going to be SVG, AJ, or Kligerman. I mean, that's kind of how we all felt. Um, and each one of them had their own way of not quite getting it this weekend. And Sam Mayer really is. If you had a fourth one behind those three, he's going to be your fourth one, and he was able to get it done. But yeah, surprised about Colleague and SVG and AJ both not being able to convert into a win for this weekend.
Yeah, math isn't necessarily my strong suit, but you guys can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong here. But I think 5 finishes was 4 wins and a runner-up. I think that's a 1.2 average finish, if my math is correct. So
that's probably a little more accurate.
Very impressive record nonetheless for Allmendinger. But he could have finished as low as 6th or 7th and still been up in the high ones or the low 2s or whatever the case may be. Having 4 wins will do that for your average finish there. So still a very impressive record nonetheless this race. I know I was saying yesterday on the wrap-up show, and I think Jeff Gluck put out a poll even asking fans, now that we have more road courses, would you like to see this, especially with how the next-gen cars racing, go back to being an oval race this time of year at Charlotte? And I think the fans are by like a 3-1 margin, saying maybe it is time to go back to the oval, and maybe the Roval's kind of run its course here. But I can tell you, AJ Allmendinger probably doesn't want to see this date go off the calendar, because whether it's the Xfinity Series or the Cup Series, always a threat to pick up a race win here. And like I said yesterday, first time since 2018 that Allmendinger did not win a race of some sort at the Charlotte Roval weekend here between Xfinity and Cup. So close yet so far for the Colleague Racing duo there. And unfortunately for Van Gisbergen, like I mentioned, leaves him eliminated from playoff contention this year. Allmendinger is still in the hunt, but he's also still looking for that first victory of the 2024 season. Kind of hard to believe we're saying that when you think of how strong he was when he ran full-time in 21 and 22, but it's been a little bit of a down year for Colleague standards this season, aside from SVG on the road courses, obviously, but we'll see if Allmendinger can turn things around here in the round of 8 and maybe make a late season charge to a championship. So that's your Xfinity Series race recap here. Now, Brandon, like I mentioned at the start of the show, I want to give you a few minutes here to give your thoughts on anything else that stood out to you from the Cup race, but specifically, we do have an update on the Alex Bowman situation. This was the other 48 Chevrolet that was struck with misfortune after the race, or during the race, rather, I guess you could say. There were some rumors as to whether or not there was a moment where Bowman was jumping over the curb and had a harsh landing. Maybe that was when he lost the extra weight that made his car underweight, but that penalty ultimately disqualified him and knocked him out of the playoffs. Joey Logano's even-year streak, potentially still alive. He does still have to get through the round of 8 first, but Brandon, what are your thoughts on the Alex Bowman disqualification?
Just another baffling thing to see on your phone later after the race is well over with. I thought the days of being encumbered were sort of done, but they're in fact not done. They've just taken on different forms and taken on new names. When we go to post-race inspection, the car that passed pre-race inspection goes through the whole race and does what he has to do to make it in to the round of 8. All of a sudden in post-race inspection does not meet the weight requirements. So something along the way, there's all sorts of turtles and roadblocks around the Charlotte Roval to get involved with. Somehow Alex Bowman got something messed up in race mode that made it not meet that minimum weight. I can't understand the reason why, but there has to be something that happened. Either maybe they took some rounds of wedge out or something like that. And I'm not saying there's any nefarious practices going on from Hendrick, but I mean, all the teams we know, they try to get everything they can out of the car, and there's some gamemanship going on sometimes around trying to get things to be just enough to pass, but also be very competitive. And so that the fact that Hendrick was coming out later today with that breaking news and deciding not to appeal, I'm really glad that they're doing that instead of letting it drag on, even though they know, this may show that they know that they in fact did something in between the race that was on the borderline of being okay and not okay. I don't know that, but I'm just trying to find a way through this situation. But overall, it's sad that he's out and Logano is in. For Logano fans, they can rejoice, and when we get here to the championship four, he might be continuing this streak that's been going for just about 10 years.
Yeah, well, to your point, Brandon, as well, I think Hendrick must have looked at the situation. They said that yesterday. They were going to look at the situation and decide whether it was even worth appealing or not. And we have that statement that they just released here for you all, if you haven't seen it yet. Hendrick Motorsports will not appeal the disqualification of a number 48 car following Sunday's race of the Charlotte Roval. NASCAR allows a clear margin to account for the difference in pre- and post-race weight. After a thorough review by our team and the sanctioning body, we simply did not give ourselves enough margin to meet the post-race requirement. Although unintentional, the infraction was avoidable. We are extremely disappointed to lose a playoff spot under these circumstances and apologize to our fans and partners. So again, from the statement that they put out there, I would think that they looked at the situation and must have recognized that the chances of them winning the appeal were probably slim to none, probably not worth making everybody wait for the next day or two here to see what the appeals committee was going to decide and, leave the playoff status of both the 48 team and Joey Logano and the 22 team up in the air. Everybody's going to have to forgive me here. I don't know exactly how this impacts the owners' playoff situation, because I know we said on the wrap-up show yesterday that because Kyle Larson ended up skipping the Roval race, the points of the 5 car earned from Justin Allgaier that weekend allowed the 5 team to win the owners' regular season title, but Tyler Reddick won the drivers' regular season title, and that's why Reddick had enough playoff points to get to the round of 8 over Joey Logano, but not the 45 team over the 22 team. So obviously Logano was already in the owners' playoffs anyway. I would assume that this, benefits the 45 team on the owner side as well, but I know that the points are obviously still going to be different because of the playoff points carrying over from the discrepancy in that regular season championship being awarded. So again, it's not a situation we see in Cup nearly as often, but I feel like the last couple of years, ironically enough, last time I can think of it happening to this degree was with the 45 car again when Kurt Busch unfortunately got hurt and 45 team made the owners championship by virtue of his Kansas win, but obviously Kurt couldn't take advantage of that on the driver's side of things. And we even saw a ride swap there with Bubba Wallace getting in the 45 car for the playoffs. So, again, it is something that I think is important to look at because it's where all the money is decided and all the prestige of the championship or the financial bonuses for these teams on these championship competing teams. Obviously, all the prestige in the media is with the drivers' championship, and similarly in Formula One with the drivers versus the constructors there. But I think there's a reason why the owners' championship exists, and I think if there is a difference between those battles, it is worth keeping an eye on here. So, again, something else to be mindful of as we get into the round of 8. But unfortunately, for Alex Bowman, he's not going to be a part of that. Hendrick Motorsports confirming now that they will not appeal the penalty handed down to them by NASCAR after this Roval race here.
And I apologize. I had only heard that official statement read and just one time when it was just announced earlier this evening. So, yeah, that the fact that it was also they claim it was unintentional, so that gives a little more peace of mind to the whole deal as well. That when you first see that sort of headline like that NASCAR has taken someone out, it's like, oh man, there they go again. Dang NASCAR.
Yeah.
But Hendrick Motorsports coming out, we're going to look at it. They looked at it. Yeah, we didn't give ourselves enough room. It was unintentional, but it's our fault. So, we're not going to win it. So I like this outcome a lot better, and I feel a lot better about this situation than the Xfinity Series situation for sure, if you look at the two side by side.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll, again, we'll keep an eye on how the playoff situation continues to unfold here. Who knows? Maybe the even streak will continue on for Joey Logano here. After all, I am just trying to pull up the two standings here to make the comparison. So 2311's 45 car has 4,024 owners points, which is 33 back from the Hendrick Motorsports number 5 car with 4,057. On the driver's side of things, It's 4,029 for Tyler Reddick, which is a 23-point gap to Kyle Larson's 4,052. So I guess it's a 10-point swing because Reddick has 5 more driver's points than his 45 team has. Larson has 5 fewer driver points than his number 5 team has. So again, a little bit of a confusing situation there of a difference in the championships. But as we saw this weekend, it could be the difference between one of those drivers or one of those teams being in the championship for when their respective driver or team isn't on the other side of things. So we'll keep our eye on that as well. So Brandon, before we move on here, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on what you saw during the Cup Series race. I know we were talking a little bit backstage about the course cutting situation with Bubba Wallace being penalized for something that it looks like William Byron did just a matter of seconds later, cutting that final chicane there. Do you have any other thoughts on how this race weekend was officiated, both on the Cup or Xfinity side?
I think just the layout changes. Besides the hairpin, I think the hairpin was sort of a welcome change. It gave you a little more straightaway in the infield area between, I think, turns 5 and 6 being that way. It gives you a little more on throttle time and provided a little more chaos, I guess, that some folks are looking for in turn 7. But the other changes I saw so insignificant and really just kind of uncalled for and certainly done at the last minute. Like, it was so sudden that we realized, like, oh, by the way, there's going to be changes at the Roval. Like what was wrong with it? I don't know. Was it for safety? It was. I don't think it was for safety. I think when they changed the backstretch chicane, that was a little more for safety for sure, because we had the Bubba Wallace incident in 2019 or 2018. Sorry, whichever year we started, but you know the one. But these changes here where we have that between Byron and Wallace, like, you look at the side. If you go back and look at the side by side picture, they look almost the same. One was a penalty and one was not. Like, what? That's another instance of just, okay, well, what is out of bounds? Like, and I think Matt White or someone said it yesterday on the broadcast. There's only 2 ways in America that you can tell someone that they're out of bounds. It's a wall or a tire, or that's not right. A tire, it has to be something that's you're going to hit. It's going to damage your car.
Natural track limits, right?
Yeah, natural track or grass and a wall. Right. Yeah, you can't have. Yeah, you can't expect, or on this side of the pond anyway, for us to see reusable room where it's maybe a little bump, but it's not going to mess us up too much, and expect us not to utilize it. Like, and if you want to officiate it that way, you've got to do it strict and consistently. There has to be a clear line of where that is, but that clearly doesn't work. We've been trying that, and COTA was a nightmare this year. It drives that point home that you can't do that. You got to have a full rubber tire there. You got to have something that's going to mess that car up, or maybe like I mentioned a barrel yesterday. Like, if you had a barrel there, you knock down the barrel. There's no arguing that. Like, you knock something down, well, you clearly biffed it. So that's my thought on that. And then also just the unnecessary changes to the Roval this year, really just to kind of like put drivers more in a box to do something wild. Not always a fan of that. I enjoyed the hairpin a little bit. It made I think it made the course flow a little more naturally than it did with the kind of funneling back before going into the track. It did kind of make the entry back onto the oval a little more awkward, though, but it was already beforehand. Martin Truex Jr. said it made a bad track worse, but you look at the evening he had yesterday, that's just frustration talking. I don't think you can really take that all purpose. But yeah, overall, it was sort of a tamer Charlotte Roval weekend, despite the penalties at the penalty at the end for Alex Bowman. And there's no signs really of us leaving the Charlotte Roval as of yet. So better get used to it and keep finding ways to enjoy it. I enjoyed the playoff implications at the end, though. We were gritting our teeth with watching the 2 battles and like what would happen if Tyler Reddick got up onto Denny Hamlin, and which he eventually did. Denny Hamlin played it safe. That was fun to watch. Playing it safe, actually working in his favor this time, not pressing the issue. Actually, it helped him advance to the round of 8. So it was a fun race from our end.
Yeah, and I have to say, it is a very, very strong round of 8 on the Cup Series side of things. I don't know what you can say there's a weak link or a Cinderella story in that round of 8. I think any one of those 8, has a fair shot of a championship. Maybe not based on full season performance necessarily. I promise I won't get on my soapbox too much here. I think there are certainly drivers that have had better overall seasons. But when you look at the resumes of these drivers, when you look at how they're performing right now, I think that a case can be made for any one of them. Going into the round of 8, we're just going to have to wait and see how they perform and if they can get to the championship 4, and then if they can maximize their performance when it comes time for Phoenix. But I guess just to wrap this one up, I can't get over the fact that if you watch a race at Watkins Glen, you see all these areas that used to be grass, used to be gravel, that are now paved over, that they even tried putting different kinds of rumble strips over this year. Didn't make a difference whatsoever.
Didn't do a thing.
I can't wrap my head around how that exists at Watkins Glen and a couple of these other places. But Shane Van Gisbergen finishes second at Circuit of the Americas, and we're going to give him a 30-second penalty for cutting a corner on the last lap and move him back to wherever he finished, somewhere in the mid to high 20s, I think. Like, it just seems a little inconsistent to me. So, again, there's another consistent inconsistency in this sport. Why are there no track limits at Watkins Glen? Why are there no track limits at certain parts of Circuit of the Americas, but other parts like through VS's, you have to be careful not to cut the course. You can't cut the chicane here, the Roval. I don't even know if we're going to keep doing. I mean, did they figure out? I guess it puts too much strain on the brakes if we didn't have that chicane there. I guess because I don't know. We did the same thing when we raced for Daytona Road Course, right? We didn't do like the whole IMSA thing where you come out of the backstretch chicane and then it's a full race down to turn 1. Completely uninterrupted, and the engine's absolutely roaring.
Yeah, we make a little extra chicane.
Yeah, you put an extra chicane there on the front stretch. I don't know. I guess for safety reasons, maybe that's a good thing, but it would eliminate this controversy if we didn't have that. I can tell you that much for sure. So we'll see. I don't know. I guess we've modified the course enough for 1 year. Maybe if we're going to keep doing this, we should leave it as is and let the drivers adapt to it how it is now. And then I don't know. Probably as soon as they do that, we might modify it again. Who knows?
Yeah, that's the trouble. They and I agree with it. When the drivers are uncomfortable, it tends to make for a more interesting show. I would like for it to make an interesting sport, but you can't keep changing the circus. You got to let it be for a few years, and I guess it has been a few years. But it's just some unnecessary changes this year, in my opinion. And also, if I feel like if you're going to make the changes, everyone needs to know at the beginning of the year when the schedule is announced, it's going to be an altered Charlotte Roval. Like, this is too late. In my opinion, it's too late in the game to be making a course decision, because like aren't we all going through the sim and for the manufacturers? Like, they've got this place scanned out. This is how it's going to be. Or maybe did they have this inside knowledge that it was going to be altered this year? Like, those little inches make a big difference for drivers, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, and again, we went through that last year with the stage breaks coming back. Like, all year we expected that there would be no stage cautions at the road course, and then we get into the playoffs, and they're like, okay, it turns out everybody's strung out. We don't like these long green flag runs, so we're going to put the stage breaks back in. And
this was the first race last year that we brought it back, yeah.
You're changing the rules not just in the middle of your season, in the middle of your postseason, in the middle of your championship playoffs here. Everybody's expecting one thing, and then you just completely throw...
please don't do that.
Like, yeah.
We want you to be successful. Please don't do that.
Yeah. That was a frustration for me last year. So, again, we'll see what happens here. Again, I would not mind a return to Viola at this point. But then again, I also don't think we need to be going to any track twice a year. Maybe Daytona's the exception, but that's just my personal opinion. I think there are plenty of great tracks that we could go to, and we could get to that number of maybe 32, 33 even races here and go to that many unique tracks. I wouldn't have a problem with that either. But if we have to go to Charlotte twice, maybe you could say this layout's at least different, but at the same time, on the Cup Series side of things for next gen, I think the mile and a half racing is a little bit better right now. So, maybe that's something that is worth looking into in the not too distant future. But we'll see.
Yeah, I hate to go on. I don't want to go on a tangent, but like that, I think the 1.5 mile craze is going to be is just another one of those passing fads. It's good right now until we alter the car a little bit, alter it a little bit. Then all of a sudden there'll be a new generation, and the 1.5 miles will suck again. It's just the ebb and flow. We they come and they go.
Yeah, as soon as they fix one problem and go all in on one track type, then you're right. You know, it's a situation like I remember days where everybody was bored of 1.5 miles, right? Like, you know, the
give it 5 years, short tracks will be better, and something else will be lacking.
The low horsepower package, yeah. I mean, it was just 5 years ago that we were talking about that, and now everybody can't get enough of the intermediates, and they think we've gone overkill on the road courses and even the short tracks maybe. So we can continue arguing about that until the end of time, though, and I'm sure we will in many respects. But let's real quick before we go into some more news and wrap up the show for the evening. We did get some breaking news just a few hours ago. We'll have much more on that on Women in Motorsports later this week. But Hailie Deegan finally announced her racing plans for 2025. There have been some rumors as soon as she followed the series on social media that maybe she was looking at a move to American Open Wheel Racing through the Indy Next Series, and she has confirmed that that is where she will be next year with HMD Motorsports. So Brandon, what's your initial reaction to Hailie Deegan's plans for 2025?
Man, I think this is the best decision she could possibly have at this point in her career with HMD, Indy Next. They need some more faces, more, they need the popularity. She's able to provide that. She's got the social following, but also for her racing career, she needs a new avenue. She needs something that's different. And we've seen her success in other forms of motorsport, and but still unable to show the results when she made her way to the Craftsman Truck Series. So what's the next move? Or into Xfinity 2, taken out mid-year this year. What's your next move? Go open wheel. And I'd like the opening video for that was put out today, and I think it really emphasized just the fitness level that's upped whenever you cross over into the world of open wheel motorsports, and just the physical fitness that's required to do that, and just how it only gets tougher to do that, in my opinion, from watching it and seeing insider things about it, just how much tougher it is working in an open wheel motorsport, especially American open wheel. Whenever you get into IndyCar, man, it's bare bones and a lot of horsepower, and will rip your arms off on the wheel. I mean, those guys are superheroes, and she has the capability to join that elite company maybe one day. But Indy Next is the place to start, and she's with a good team to do it. It'll be interesting to see how she fares. The first year, no big, just like other ventures she started in NASCAR. First year, I don't have many big expectations. Just finish the races, don't get caught up in trouble, maybe catch a top 10 here or there, but keep your ride for the next year and just make little baby steps.
Yeah, I certainly have mixed feelings on it, because I do get, I do get what you're saying, Brandon, about this, being perhaps, something that makes sense for her at this point in her career. Obviously, it seemed like NASCAR was kind of stalling out for her. And ironically enough, it's drawn some more Danica Patrick comparisons, kind of like the reverse of what Patrick did growing
Inverse.
up inverse, I guess. Yeah, there you go. Obviously, being somebody who had got their career started in American Open Wheel Racing with IndyCar, and then transitioning over to NASCAR. But Hailie Deegan, I think it's easy to forget, Deegan's still only 23 years old. So still certainly early enough in her career where you think, maybe a career change like this could lead to a long and fruitful career down the road. But I think what you said, Brandon, is very important, because I think of Jamie Chadwick, obviously, coming over in 2023, coming from a W Series, coming from a European ladder. And it took her a little bit of time to get used to the Indy Next Series, even though it was open wheel to open wheel, it's a different culture here in America, different track types and different cars. I would think there's more overlap between what Chadwick was coming from to an Indy Next car than what Deegan's going to be transitioning over towards. But even with Chadwick, it took her some time, especially on the ovals, to get used to this series, and we saw some progression this year. But even now, 2 years in, I hope that she's back in Indy next. I hope she and Hailie Deegan are racing each other next year, because I think that even though Chadwick got a win and showed noticeable improvement, I don't know that she's quite ready for that next step up to the main show in the IndyCar series here. So, there's that. And then you couple that with the fact that the last big name to make the switch over from NASCAR to IndyCar racing is Jimmy Johnson. And it took Jimmy a lot of time to get to the point where he was as competitive as he was. And even then, we really only saw him, mix it up on the ovals here. It was a real struggle for him to come over and relearn how to drive. And he was very open in admitting how he had to unlearn a lot of what he learned from his illustrious NASCAR career to transition over to the IndyCar series. And he was a 7-time Cup champion. And I look at Deegan's results in NASCAR, and obviously, she is still very young and has, I think, a lot of potential years ahead of her in racing. But she certainly does not have the resume or the results that Jimmy Johnson had. And you saw how tough it was for Jimmy. So I think this is going to be a challenge for Hailie Deegan. Now, can she learn? Absolutely. Do I think she's going to be up to the challenge? Do I think she's going to work hard? She absolutely will. But to your point, Brandon, I think we have to give her at least 1 or 2 years to see what level of potential she truly has in this series and making this career change before we, make a judgment one way or another as to what this could do for her down the road. So it's going to take time, I think, for her to make this transition for sure.
Yeah. Hailie Deegan fans, I just got to say, don't get, and you probably know this, don't give up on her in the first year. Don't give up on her in the second year. This is going to be, just like a lot like Jimmy Johnson, unlearning what she has learned. It's going to be neat to see, though, with the some of the additions of ovals for the Indy Next Series, such as Nashville at the end of the year, that she'll be able to take part in. Maybe that'll be a little more in her wheelhouse, but maybe this is an opportunity to find her niche, that complements her innate skills behind the wheel. Maybe this is going to be something that will be grasped onto better than what NASCAR turned out to be.
All right, we'll leave Deegan's news there for this show, and obviously we'll have more on how her first season of Indy Next goes next year on this show in 2025 with the Indy Next Series, and stay tuned for more coverage on that, and stay tuned for more of this week or whenever the next Women in Motorsports episode is. I'm sure we'll go much more in depth on Hailie Deegan's future and this career change for on the next episode of that show, so stay tuned for that as well. Finally tonight, before we move on, there was the Whelen Modified Tour race at Thompson Speedway, and I just want to say real quick, congratulations to Justin Bonsignore. His 43rd career win in the Modified Tour puts him third all time, and he passes the late, great Ted Christopher, who had 42 wins in this series on the all-time wins list. So, again, Justin Bonsignore, we saw it in the Xfinity Series this year and in ARCA earlier this year at Daytona. Glad that he's finally gotten an opportunity on a little bit of a bigger stage to showcase his talent behind the wheel. But any Modified Tour fan will certainly be able to tell you that that's been apparent for quite some time now. And Bonsignore, congratulations on another win, another milestone here in his Modified Tour career. All right, so that's going to be our show for this evening. Brandon, I'll let you go first here, as always, for our one shining moment before we go into the closing for this show.
Got to give a one shining moment to the USRN crew for allowing me to be on for another event this year. I think this is the most I've done in a year, and it is always fun to be on there, I think. And we had a full house, too. We had Matt White, we had Matthew Owens, and Seth Eves, and also had Josh helping us over across the pond as well. That was simulcast there on JB Motorsports, so that was a lot of fun. But also want to give my one shining moment to Parker Kligerman. And, this has got to be the one of the hardest second place finishes. It goes up there with, Mark Martin at the Daytona 500. This kind of goes up there for me as one of those what could have been. But I think you're right. This will go down as one of those second place finishes that will be remembered somehow, some way.
Yeah, well, not a second place finish. He fell all the way to sixth there at the end. But I get what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah, in second.
We know what you mean, right?
Yes.
Like one of those, those almost victories where
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, within his grasp, and just didn't work out there at the end. But I think I'm not going to blame you for taking my Brandon, because I think it's a lot of people's shining moment on this weekend.
Have to.
The humility in defeat, and again, what a heart-wrenching, heartbreaking moment it was for Parker Kligerman. And again, like I said earlier in the show tonight, you can't help but feel like this was probably his last best chance to get a win with this team and in the Xfinity Series before he steps away from full-time driving. But I hope that we see him next year. And I have to bring this up as well. I just saw the clip. I haven't listened to the full podcast, but Lee Diffie was on Door Bumper Clear this week along with Bob Pockrass. And one of the things that Lee was saying is, look, I know he's already announced that he's stepping away, but if that weren't the case, if he's willing to reconsider, a drive like this would be something where if I were an owner, I would be getting on the phone and contacting Parker and saying, hey, this might be something we could work out for 2025. He would certainly be a leading contender for a ride in this series based on the performance that he put in this weekend. So again, unfortunate that it ended the way it did for him. Still a solid result nonetheless, but again, Brandon, you can't help but think about what might have been had the caution light come on. Just inches was the difference in that situation there. And again, really unfortunate situation for that entire Big Machine team.
Yeah, and the thing is, he is too young to be hanging it up. Like, really, I do hope someone does give him a call and he does reconsider.
Yeah, and again, I don't think he's going to hang it up entirely. I do hope that we will see him back for at least a few races next year. But again, like we showed tonight, he's been with NBC for many years. He's got his future set there, and I can't blame him for wanting to step away from the grind and the pressure of competing for a championship and for a full season here. But he certainly earned some more opportunities with this drive this weekend here. So we'll see. Hopefully we see him back again in 2025 in some capacity, even though obviously it won't be full time. But that's going to wrap up our show for this evening here. So thank you all so much for your continued support of the Grid Encore program. Be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network and follow us on all of our social media platforms, X/Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, Threads, most importantly right here on YouTube. Thank you all again for your continued support throughout the year and helping us get to 1,000 subscribers and beyond. If you really liked what you saw tonight, you can take a few minutes after our program here and consider joining our Patreon. Join Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew in investing in Grid Network to help keep us on the air throughout the rest of this 2024 season and into 2025. If you want to see us at the track on a more regular basis next year, you can help us reach our long-term goal of $500 a month to help us begin attending races on site on a more regular basis next season. Or you can also become a member of the Grid Network YouTube channel, or if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, we have links to buy me a coffee in the description box below, or if you're watching on YouTube, we have a super chat and super thanks features enabled as well. Now, Kobe Lambeth will be back on Grid tonight this week with Matt White. We'll see who the fill-in co-host is this week. Josh, we're still thinking of you as you continue to recover from your surgery there. Women in Motorsports will hopefully be back this week as well. Obviously, we got some major news today to talk about, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And stay tuned for more coverage, as always, from the Grid Network pre-race wrap-up to follow this weekend. And then we will have another Encore show for you 1 week from tonight, Monday night, 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 4 Pacific. Figure out the time zones from there. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off for the evening?
Well, my mic was muted there. Yeah, well, we'll be heading to Las Vegas next weekend, and I see your final thought, and that is a chilling thing there. I'll go ahead and let you get to it.
Yeah, well, and again, ironic that we're coming up to Vegas this weekend as well, but I can't help but think it's been 13 years on Wednesday since we lost the late, great Dan Whelen, so I want to send my best to Susie and Sebastian and Oliver and all of the Whelen family and everybody in the IndyCar community. Hard to believe it. It's been that long. I remember watching that Vegas race and only being 12 years old at the time. It's just hitting me now that there's more time has passed between that race and where we are now than what my entire lifetime was up at that point. I was only 12 years old watching that race in 2011. It's hard to believe it's been almost 13 years now since we lost Dan Whelen. So again, want to send my best to his family here. And again, hard not to think about him as we return to Las Vegas with NASCAR this weekend as well. But hopefully we're in a good place here with the round of 8 in both the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. I think we've got very strong fields coming out of this Roval weekend. And hopefully we get some good racing action on the 1.5 mile at Vegas this weekend. So make sure you all stay tuned for that, and then stay tuned for our coverage this weekend. Like I just mentioned, plenty more coming for the Grid Network as we finish out 2024 strong. So for Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all so much for watching. We will see you next time right here on the Grid Network.